My husband said I wasn't exciting anymore, so I gave him the thrill of losing the best thing he had without even seeing it coming. It started when I found the receipt in his gym bag. Dinner for two at Lucia's, our anniversary restaurant. We'd been married 8 years. Our anniversary was in April. This was October. I didn't confront him. That would have been the old me, the boring one apparently. Instead, I checked our bank statements that night while he snored beside me. 3 months of charges I didn't recognize. Hotel bars, late-night ride shares, a jewelry purchase for $340. I never received jewelry. The next morning, I made him breakfast like always. Then I called my old college roommate Nina, who worked in private investigation now. I needed to know everything. 2 weeks later, Nina handed me a folder. Her name was Bethany, 26, worked at his office. The photos showed them at restaurants, his hand on her lower back. In one, taken at some rooftop bar, they were kissing. I sat in Nina's office staring at that photo. My hands weren't shaking. I wasn't crying. I felt calm, almost relieved. For months, he'd been criticizing everything. The way I dressed, that I'd gained weight after 2 kids, said the spark was gone. I'd believed him. I spent the next month becoming someone new. Not for him, for me. I joined Nina's boxing gym and discovered I loved hitting things. I updated my wardrobe. I had lunch with old friends I'd neglected. I laughed more. He noticed, started asking questions. Where was I going? Why was I dressed up? I told him sweetly that I was just trying to be more exciting. Isn't that what he wanted? I opened a separate bank account and started transferring money. Small amounts he wouldn't notice. I consulted a divorce attorney. I documented everything. I was methodical, patient, cold. Then I did something that would have horrified the woman I used to be. I catfished him, created a fake profile on the dating app Nina found on his phone. Young, adventurous, exactly his type, apparently. He took the bait within hours. For 3 weeks, I flirted with my own husband through a screen. He told this fake woman everything. How his wife was boring, how their marriage was dead, how he was planning to leave once the holidays passed because he didn't want to ruin Christmas for the kids. I screenshot everything. On a Friday night, I told him I was visiting my sister. Instead, I went to a hotel across town, the same one from his credit card statements. I messaged him from the fake profile, suggested we finally meet. Tonight, room 412. I watched from my car as he arrived at 9:15, showered and wearing cologne. He knocked on that hotel room door for 10 minutes before he realized he'd been played. I drove home, printed everything, and laid it out on our kitchen table. The bank statements, the photos, the messages, the fake profile conversation where he'd admitted planning to abandon us after Christmas. When he got home at 11:30, furious and confused, I was sitting there waiting. His face went white when he saw the table. The divorce papers were already filed. I'd already transferred half our savings, entirely legal since it was marital property. I'd already secured an excellent attorney using money from the emergency fund my grandmother left me, the fund he didn't know existed. He tried explaining, justifying, then got angry, accused me of being crazy. Our daughters, Violet and Ruby, woke up from the shouting. I told them calmly that Daddy made some mistakes, that he was going to stay somewhere else for a while. He left that night with one suitcase, still sputtering about how I wasn't the woman he married. He was right. She would have stayed. That was 4 months ago. The divorce is almost final. I got the house, primary custody, and a settlement that made his lawyer wince. Bethany stopped posting gym selfies around the time he moved into his studio apartment. But here's what nobody tells you about burning your life down and rebuilding it. Last week, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. A woman's voice asked if this was about the photograph. I had no idea what she meant. She said we needed to meet, that what he did to me wasn't even close to his worst secret, that there was something about our daughters I needed to know before the divorce was final. The woman's name was Claudia. We met at a coffee shop downtown, the kind with exposed brick and overpriced lattes. She was older than I expected, maybe 50, with graying hair pulled back in a tight bun. She carried a manila envelope that she clutched like it contained nuclear codes. She didn't order anything, just sat down across from me and slid the envelope across the table. I need you to understand something before you open this, she said. I'm a retired social worker. I spent 30 years in family services. I've seen things that would break most people. But this, she tapped the envelope, this kept me up at night for years. Open it, I said. Inside were photographs. Old ones printed on the kind of glossy paper that hadn't been used in over a decade. The first showed a little girl, maybe 6 years old, with dark curly hair and frightened eyes. She was sitting on a couch that looked familiar, but I couldn't place it. The second photo showed the same girl, older now, maybe 9 or 10, same couch, same scared expression. I don't understand, I said. That's Violet, Claudia said quietly. Or rather, that's who Violet was supposed to be. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? Your husband had a daughter before he met you. Her name was Violet. She'd be 16 now if, Claudia paused, if she hadn't disappeared 12 years ago. The coffee shop felt like it was tilting. I gripped the edge of the table. Disappeared. Vanished from a park 3 blocks from his old apartment. She was playing on the swings. He said he looked away for just a minute. When he looked back, she was gone. The case was never solved. No body was ever found. I stared at the photographs. The little girl did look like my Violet. Same nose, same chin. But that was impossible. My Violet was only 8 years old. I was there when she was born. I held her minutes after she came into this world. Claudia pulled out more papers, police reports, case files, newspaper clippings with headlines about a missing child. And there, in every article, was my husband's face. Younger, devastated, pleading for information about his missing daughter. His first wife committed suicide 6 months after Violet disappeared, Claudia said. The guilt destroyed her. They'd been fighting that day at the park. She'd walked away to cool off, left him alone with their daughter. She blamed herself for leaving, blamed him for not watching close enough. I felt sick. Why are you showing me this? Because 2 years after the first Violet disappeared, your husband moved to a new city, started over, met you, and then you got pregnant. And when you had a daughter, he insisted on naming her Violet, didn't he? She was right. He had insisted, said it was his grandmother's name, a family tradition. I'd thought it was sweet. And then, Claudia continued, 3 years after that, you had another daughter. Ruby. That was his mother's name, correct? No, I said slowly. His mother's name was Patricia. He said Ruby was after some great aunt. Claudia shook her head. His first daughter, Violet, had a little sister. Her name was Ruby. She was 3 when Violet disappeared. She's 14 now. Lives with his ex-wife's sister in Oregon. The room was spinning. I looked at the photographs again, the couch in the pictures. I finally realized why it looked familiar. It was the same couch that was in our garage, the one he'd insisted we keep even though it was old and worn. Said it had sentimental value. There's more, Claudia said. She pulled out a final photograph. This one was recent. It showed a teenage girl with dark hair standing outside a high school. The first Ruby, all grown up. I hired a private investigator 6 months ago, Claudia said. Started tracking your husband after I saw his name on a real estate transaction. I spent years working his daughter's case. It haunted me. I never stopped looking for answers. And then I found out he'd remarried, had 2 daughters, named them the exact same names. Why? I whispered. Why would he do that? I don't know. Grief, guilt, delusion. Maybe he's trying to rewrite history. Maybe he thinks he can undo what happened by starting over. Or maybe, she paused, maybe it's something worse. What do you mean worse? I mean that Violet's case was never solved. The police had their suspicions but could never prove anything. Your husband's story had inconsistencies. Timeline issues. He said he looked away for a minute, but witnesses said they didn't see him at the park for at least 20 minutes. His car was parked 6 blocks away instead of in the parking lot. And there was something else. What? The first Ruby, the 3-year-old sister, she told the police something odd. Said that her daddy told her that Violet went to live with the Angels. But she said he told her this before anyone knew Violet was missing, before they started searching. The police dismissed it as a confused toddler mixing up the timeline. But I always wondered. My hands were shaking now. You think he killed his own daughter? I think that case deserves another look, especially now that he's done this strange thing, replacing his lost daughters with new ones, same names, similar looks. It's not normal behavior. I gathered up all the papers and photos and shoved them back in the envelope. I need to go. Wait, Claudia grabbed my arm. There's something else you should know. I've been watching him, following him sometimes, making sure those girls are safe. You're Violet and Ruby. And 3 weeks ago, I saw him at a park, different city, but he was there, just sitting on a bench, watching the children play. And he was taking photographs on his phone, lots of them, of little girls who weren't his daughters. I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. I didn't pick it up. I just walked out of that coffee shop into the bright afternoon sun that felt too normal for what I'd just learned. I drove home in a daze. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for 20 minutes trying to process everything. My phone buzzed. A text from him. Can I pick up the girls this weekend? We need to discuss custody arrangements. I stared at that text. The man I'd married, the father of my children, had I ever really known him at all? I thought about the first Violet, the little girl with frightened eyes in those photographs, the one who vanished while her father supposedly looked away for just a minute. And then I thought about my Violet, my beautiful 8-year-old daughter who had her father's nose and her father's chin, who he'd insisted on naming after his supposedly deceased grandmother, who wasn't a grandmother at all but a missing child whose case was never solved. I called Nina. I need you to find out everything about a missing child case from 12 years ago, I said, and I need you to find it fast. I spent the next 3 days digging through everything Claudia had given me. Police reports, witness statements, news articles. The more I read, the more inconsistencies I found. His timeline of events changed between interviews. First, he said he was watching Violet the whole time. Then he said he looked away to check his phone. Then he said he went to move his car because he'd parked illegally. But it was the interview with the first Ruby that stuck with me. The 3-year-old who said her daddy told her Violet went to live with the Angels before anyone knew she was missing. The detective who interviewed her noted that she was very specific about the timing. Said daddy told her this during breakfast, before they went to the park, before Violet disappeared. I found another detail buried in the reports. The first Violet had a stuffed rabbit, purple with floppy ears. She took it everywhere. It was missing when she vanished. Police never found it. Assumed whoever took her took the rabbit too. My Violet had an identical rabbit, purple with floppy ears. She'd had it since she was 2 years old. He'd given it to her. Said he found it at an antique store and it reminded him of one he'd had as a child. I went to the garage, to that old couch he insisted we keep. I hadn't really looked at it in years. It was buried under boxes and old furniture. I started pulling everything away from it, moving boxes, dragging furniture. My hands were filthy and I was sweating by the time I could finally see the whole couch. It was worn, faded. The kind of couch you'd see in a home from the early 2000s. I lifted the cushions. Underneath was change, old receipts, crumbs, and then I found it. Wedged deep in the corner where the cushion met the arm. A small purple ear. Just the tip of it visible. I pulled. It was stuck. I pulled harder. The fabric tore and out came a stuffed rabbit, purple with floppy ears. The fur was matted and dirty. One eye was missing, but there was no mistaking what it was. There was a name tag sewn into the back, handwritten in faded marker, Violet. Not my Violet. The first Violet. The missing Violet. Her rabbit hadn't disappeared with her. It had been here all along, in his couch. The one he insisted we keep. The one he said had sentimental value. I sat on that garage floor holding that rabbit, and I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The implications were too big, too horrible. My phone rang. It was Nina. "You need to sit down for this," she said. "I'm already sitting." I found the detective who worked the original case. He's retired now, but he still remembers it. Says it was the one case he never could let go. He always suspected your husband, but they didn't have enough evidence. But here's the thing. After the daughter disappeared and the wife killed herself, your husband received a life insurance payout, $500,000. He'd taken out a policy on his wife 6 months before Violet disappeared. The detective found that suspicious, but insurance fraud isn't the same as murder or kidnapping. What else? The detective said there was a witness who came forward years later, after the case had gone cold, a woman who'd been at the park that day. She said she saw your husband leave the park carrying something wrapped in a blanket, headed toward where his car was parked 6 blocks away. But by the time she came forward, the trail was too cold. No physical evidence. Just her word against his. What happened to the witness? That's the weird part. She died 2 years later. Car accident. Ran off the road late at night. No witnesses. Police ruled it an accident, but the detective always wondered. Said it was too convenient. I looked down at the rabbit in my hands. "Nina, I found something. The first Violet's rabbit. It was hidden in his couch. The one in our garage. Silence on the other end. Then, you need to call the police. Right now." "I can't. The divorce isn't final. He still has partial custody. If I accuse him of this and I'm wrong, I'll lose my girls. He'll use it against me. Say I'm unstable. Making up stories. So what are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. But I need you to find that detective. The retired one. I need to talk to him." His name was Harvey. Detective Harvey Grantham. He agreed to meet me at a diner on the edge of town. He was in his 70s now, with white hair and tired eyes that had seen too much. I brought the rabbit in a plastic bag, set it on the table between us. He stared at it for a long time. "Where did you find this?" "Hidden in his couch. The one from his old apartment. He kept it all these years." Harvey picked up the bag, turned it over. His hands were shaking slightly. I looked for this everywhere. We tore his apartment apart, searched his car, went through the park with dogs, never found it. Why would he keep it? Trophy maybe, souvenir, or maybe he's just sick. Some people like to keep reminders of what they've done. I've been doing this for 40 years, seen all kinds. But your husband, he paused. There was something about him that never sat right with me. Too calm, too collected for a man whose daughter had just vanished. Most parents are hysterical, falling apart. He was composed, helpful, answered all our questions with just the right amount of emotion, not too much, not too little, like he'd practiced. "You think he killed her? I think that little girl didn't walk away from that park on her own, and I think your husband knows exactly what happened to her. But knowing and proving are two different things. We never found a body, never found any physical evidence, just inconsistencies in his story, and one witness who said she saw him leaving with a bundle. Not enough for an arrest, not enough for a prosecution. What about now, with the rabbit?" Harvey shook his head. "It's been 12 years. Chain of custody is broken. You found it in a couch that could have been anywhere, could have belonged to anyone. Any defense attorney would shred it. And without a body, we still don't have a case. So he just gets away with it. Unless you can find something else. Something concrete. Something that connects him to what happened. Because right now, all we have is a stuffed animal and a lot of suspicion. That won't hold up in court." I left that diner feeling hopeless. My husband, the father of my children, might have killed his first daughter, and there was nothing I could do about it. Nothing that would hold up legally. Nothing that would protect Violet and Ruby from a monster who gave them the same names as his previous daughters. But then I remembered something. The photographs. The ones Claudia showed me of the first Violet. The ones taken in his apartment. On that couch. If he'd kept the couch all these years, what else had he kept? What else might be hidden in our house? I waited until night. Until Violet and Ruby were asleep in their beds. Then I started searching. Really searching. Not just looking at what was visible, but digging. Opening boxes. Checking hidden corners. Going through the attic. The basement. Every closet. Every drawer. In the back of his office closet, behind his winter coats, I found a box. Cardboard, unlabeled. Sealed with packing tape that had yellowed with age. I carried it to the kitchen, cut the tape, opened it. Inside were children's clothes, small sizes. A little dress with flowers, tiny shoes, a hairbrush, a baby blanket, and underneath all of that, a photo album. I opened it with shaking hands. The pictures showed a life I'd never known. A younger version of my husband with a different wife. A pretty woman with long brown hair and a sad smile. And 2 little girls. Violet and Ruby. The first ones. The original ones. The ones who came before my daughters. I flipped through the pages. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, a trip to the beach. Normal family photos except for one thing. In every single picture, the little girls looked scared. Not obviously terrified. Nothing that would alarm a casual observer. But their smiles didn't reach their eyes. Their bodies were stiff. They leaned away from him slightly in group shots. There was one photo near the end of the album that made my blood run cold. It showed the first Violet, maybe 5 years old, sitting on his lap. She was looking at the camera, but her hands were clenched in her lap, white-knuckled, like she was holding onto something or stopping herself from running. And in the very back of the album, tucked into the last page, was a newspaper clipping. Not about Violet's disappearance. This was older, from before my husband had married his first wife. It was about a missing girl in his hometown, 11 years old, vanished from a playground, never found. The article was dated 19 years ago. I stared at that clipping, at the picture of the missing girl. She had dark curly hair and frightened eyes. She looked eerily similar to both Violet's. His type, apparently. My phone buzzed. A text from him. I need to come by tomorrow to get some things from the garage. Will you be home around 2? I looked at the box of memories. At the newspaper clipping about another missing girl. At the photo album full of scared children. I thought about the rabbit hidden in the couch. The inconsistencies in his story. The witness who saw him leaving the park with a bundle. The witness who later died in a convenient accident. And I realized something. He wasn't done. Whatever he'd done to the first Violet, whatever darkness lived inside him, it didn't just go away. It was still there, waiting. And my daughters, my Violet and Ruby, they were living with a man who might have killed his previous family. I couldn't prove what he'd done 12 years ago, but maybe I could stop him from doing it again. I called Nina. I need you to install cameras, I said. Hidden ones. In my house. Every room. I need to catch him doing something. Anything that proves what he is. That's going to be expensive. I don't care. Use whatever's left of the money I transferred. I need those cameras installed by tomorrow morning, before he comes over. The cameras were in place by noon, tiny things hidden in smoke detectors and picture frames and air vents. Nina had worked fast. She'd brought 2 guys from her firm and they'd wired the whole house in 4 hours. When he arrived at 2, I was ready. I let him in, stayed calm, watched him move through the house toward the garage. He didn't know Violet and Ruby were at my mom's house. Didn't know I'd made sure they were far away. He was in the garage for 30 minutes. When he came back inside, he was carrying a small bag. Just some old tools, he said. Things I need for the new place. But I'd watched on my phone, the live feed from the garage camera. I'd seen what he actually did. He'd gone straight to that couch, checked the spot where the rabbit had been hidden, found it empty. His face had changed, gone from calm to panicked, to angry in the span of seconds. And then he'd done something interesting. He'd pulled out his phone and made a call. I couldn't hear what he was saying on the camera feed, but I could read his body language. Urgent, upset, pacing. After he left, I checked my cameras. He'd gone into Violet's room, stood there for a long moment just staring at her bed, at her toys, at the photos on her wall. The look on his face was wrong. Not fatherly, not loving, something else, something hungry. Then he'd gone into Ruby's room, done the same thing, just stood there, staring. I felt sick watching it. This was the man I'd married, the father of my children, and he was looking at them like they were objects, replacements, do-overs for the ones he'd lost. Nina called me that night. I traced that phone call he made from your garage, she said. It went to a burner phone, untraceable. But I did some digging, found out he's been buying burner phones regularly for the past 2 years, one every few months. Uses them for a bit, then gets rid of them. Why would he need burner phones? People use burner phones when they don't want to be traced, when they're doing something they don't want connected back to them. Like what? Like anything illegal. Could be he's having affairs. Could be he's involved in something worse. But combined with everything else you found, I'd say he's hiding something big. I need more, I said. More evidence. More proof. Something concrete that I can take to the police or use in court. I might have something, Nina said. That detective, Harvey. He kept copies of all his files on the first Violet's case. Everything. Including things that didn't make it into the official reports. He's willing to share them with you. Says he wants to see this case solved before he dies. Send me everything. The files arrived the next day. Boxes of them, interviews, photos, timeline reconstructions, evidence logs, and buried in all of that, something Harvey had highlighted with a yellow sticky note. A bank record showing a large cash withdrawal 2 days before Violet disappeared. $10,000, taken out in cash. My husband had told police he needed it for a business investment that fell through. But Harvey had followed up. There was no business investment, no record of any transaction. The money just vanished. And there was something else, a storage unit. My husband had rented a storage unit 3 weeks before Violet disappeared. He'd kept it for 6 months after her disappearance, then closed it. Harvey had gotten a warrant to search it, but by the time they got access, the unit was empty. Completely clean. Not a single item left behind. I looked up storage facilities in our current city, found 5 within a reasonable distance, called each one pretending to be his assistant confirming his unit number. The third facility I called confirmed he had a unit there, had rented it for the past 6 years, paid annually in cash. I hung up and stared at my phone. He had a storage unit. He'd always had storage units, places he kept things away from prying eyes. away from wives and police and anyone who might ask questions. I needed to get inside that unit. Nina said it was a bad idea, said it was breaking and entering, said anything I found wouldn't be admissible in court, but I didn't care anymore. I needed to know what he was hiding. Needed to know if my daughters were safe or if I was living with a man who collected missing children like trophies. We went at night. Nina picked the lock. It took her 6 minutes. The door rolled up and we stepped inside. The unit was small, maybe 10 by 10, and it was full. Boxes stacked floor to ceiling, plastic storage bins, old furniture, normal storage unit stuff at first glance. But then I started opening boxes. The first one contained children's clothes. Different sizes, different styles. Some I recognized as belonging to the first Violet and Ruby. Others I didn't recognize at all. Tiny dresses, small shoes, a winter coat that looked decades old. The second box had toys. Not modern toys. Old ones. Stuffed animals, board games, a doll with a cracked face, a toy truck with rust on the wheels, things from different eras, different decades even. The third box was full of photographs. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. All of children, little girls mostly. Different ages, different hair colors, but all with similar features, similar builds. And in every photo, the same scared expression, the same tension in their small bodies. Some photos I recognized. The first Violet and Ruby. Others were strangers, children I'd never seen before. Children whose pictures shouldn't be in my husband's storage unit. At the bottom of the box, I found a journal. Leather-bound, worn. The pages were filled with handwriting. His handwriting. I recognized it immediately. I opened to a random page. The entry was dated 15 years ago, long before he'd married his first wife, long before either Violet was born. Met her at the park today, it read. She was perfect. Dark hair, big eyes, maybe 9 or 10, wearing a yellow dress. Watched her for an hour. Followed her home. Found out where she lives. What school she goes to. Her routine. This one is going to be special. I can feel it. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the journal. I flipped to another page, another entry, another girl, another plan. There were dozens of entries, spanning years, detailing how he'd watched children, followed them, learned their patterns. Some entries ended abruptly. Others had a single word at the bottom, success. I found an entry about the first Violet. She's getting older, it read, starting to understand, starting to ask questions. She looks at me differently now, wary, scared. It's not the same anymore. The magic is gone. I need to start over. Need a fresh beginning. But first I have to deal with this situation. Can't have loose ends. The entry was dated 1 week before Violet disappeared. I felt bile rising in my throat. I flipped forward. Found an entry dated 3 days after she vanished. It's done, it read. Cleaner than I expected. The wife is falling apart. Perfect. Her grief makes me look innocent. The police suspect nothing. Already planning the next phase. New city, new identity, new family. And this time I'll do it right. This time I'll have 2. Can start the younger one earlier. Train her better. And when they get too old, too aware, I'll just start over again. The cycle can continue indefinitely if I'm smart about it. I couldn't read anymore. I closed the journal, looked at Nina. Her face was white. We need to call the police, she whispered. Right now. But I was looking at the other boxes, the ones we hadn't opened yet. There were at least 20 more. I walked to the back of the unit, opened another box. Inside were IDs, driver's licenses from different states, different names, but all with his face. He'd been using aliases, moving from place to place, starting over repeatedly. Another box contained documents, birth certificates, marriage licenses, divorce papers, all under different names. He'd been married at least 6 times that I could count, and each marriage lasted about 8 years, the same amount of time he'd been married to me. The next box made me scream. Nina had to cover my mouth to muffle the sound. It was full of small bones, tiny skeletal remains wrapped in cloth. Some were complete, others were fragments, and each bundle had a name tag, written in his handwriting. Violet, age 6. The first Violet, my husband's first daughter. The missing girl whose case was never solved. She hadn't disappeared. She hadn't run away. She hadn't been kidnapped by a stranger. Her father had killed her, and he'd kept her bones like a prize. There were other names too, girls I didn't recognize. Chelsea, age 9. Morgan, age 8. Zara, age 10. At least 12 different names. 12 different girls. 12 different murders spanning back nearly 20 years. My husband wasn't just a killer. He was a serial killer. One who targeted his own daughters, who married women, had children, kept them until they got too old or too aware, then murdered them and started over with a new family, a cycle he'd perfected over decades. And my Violet was 8, the same age he'd decided the first Violet needed to be dealt with. My Ruby was 5, about the age he started training them, according to his journal. We were next. My daughters were next. He was going to kill them, and I'd been sitting in family court fighting over custody arrangements while he planned their murders. Nina was already on the phone with 911. I could hear her explaining what we'd found, giving the address, begging them to hurry. I pulled out my phone, called my mom. Don't let him near the girls, I said. I don't care what excuse he gives. I don't care if he has legal rights. Don't let him within 100 feet of them. What's wrong? She asked. You sound terrified. Just promise me. Please, I promise. They're safe. They're here with me. What's happening? I'll explain everything later. Just keep them safe. The police arrived within 10 minutes. Then more police. Then forensics teams. Then federal agents. The storage unit became a crime scene. Nina and I gave statements, showed them the journal, the bones, the photographs, the fake IDs. By morning, every news channel was covering the story. Serial killer discovered. Multiple victims spanning 2 decades. Children murdered by their own father. A monster hiding in plain sight. They put out a warrant for his arrest, sent officers to his apartment. But he was gone. Vanished the moment he realized the rabbit was missing from the couch. He'd known I'd found something. Known his secret was unraveling. And he'd run. The FBI took over the case. Started tracking his movements, his finances, his phone records. But he'd been planning for this possibility for years. Had escape routes, money hidden away, fake identities ready to go. 3 days went by with no sign of him. Then a week. Then 2 weeks. The FBI assured me he couldn't get far. Said they'd catch him soon, but I knew better. I'd read his journal, seen how carefully he planned, how patient he was, how good he was at disappearing and starting over. He was out there somewhere, free, hunting probably, looking for his next family, his next set of daughters to mold and eventually murder. And I was here with Violet and Ruby, trying to explain to them why Daddy wasn't coming back, why we had to move, why there were security systems and panic buttons and FBI agents watching our house. Ruby was too young to fully understand, but Violet, my 8-year-old Violet, she understood enough. She'd started having nightmares, waking up screaming about a man with Daddy's face standing over her bed. One night, about 3 weeks after everything came out, she climbed into my bed. Couldn't sleep. I held her while she cried. Did Daddy not love us? She asked. I didn't know how to answer that. How do you explain to a child that their father is a monster? That he didn't love them the way normal fathers do? That he saw them as possessions? Temporary toys to be discarded when they stopped being fun? Daddy is sick, I finally said. In his brain, he can't love people the way he's supposed to. Is that why he named me after the other Violet? I froze. How did you know about the other Violet? I heard you talking to Aunt Nina. About the girl who disappeared. About how Daddy gave me her name. I pulled her closer. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I didn't know. I never would have let him near you if I'd known what he was. It's not your fault, Mommy. You were fooled too. She paused. Then asked quietly, did he kill her? The first Violet? I couldn't lie to her. Yes. Yes, he did. She was quiet for a long time. Finally, she whispered, he was going to kill me too, wasn't he? And there it was. The truth I'd been trying to protect her from. The horrible reality that my daughter, at 8 years old, had already figured out. Yes, I said. I think he was. But I found out before he could. And now you're safe. You and Ruby both. But he's still out there. Yes. What if he comes back? He won't. I won't let him. But even as I said it, I knew it was a hollow promise. I couldn't control what my husband did. Couldn't stop him if he decided to come back. All I could do was try to stay vigilant. Try to keep my daughters safe. Try to rebuild our lives from the ashes of the lies I'd believed for 8 years. A month after he disappeared, a package arrived at my door. No return address. Just my name written in handwriting I recognized immediately. Inside was a photograph. Not an old one, a new one, taken from across the street. It showed me and Violet and Ruby walking into our new house. The one we'd moved to after everything happened. The secure house with the security system and the panic buttons and the FBI surveillance. He'd found us, and he wanted me to know. There was a note tucked into the envelope. You took my collection, it read. You ruined everything I'd built. But don't worry, I'll start over. I always do. And maybe, when the time is right, I'll come back for what's mine. After all, Violet's almost the perfect age. And Ruby will be 2 in a few years. I've invested so much in them already. It would be a shame to waste that investment. See you soon. The FBI put us in protective custody immediately, moved us to a safe house, changed our names, started planning witness relocation. But I knew none of it would matter. He'd found us once. He'd find us again. And the scariest part was knowing he was right. He would start over. Would find another woman to manipulate. Another family to infiltrate. More daughters to mold and eventually murder. The cycle would continue until someone stopped him. So I made a decision. I couldn't run forever. Couldn't hide my daughters away for the rest of their lives. Couldn't let him win by making us prisoners of his terror. I was going to find him first. I was going to hunt the hunter. And I was going to make sure he never hurt another child again. The FBI didn't like my plan. Said it was too dangerous. Said I should let them handle it. But they'd been looking for him for 6 weeks and had found nothing. He was a ghost. Moving through society using skills he'd honed over decades of successfully evading capture after each murder. But I had something they didn't. I knew him. Knew how he thought. Knew his patterns. I'd been married to him for 8 years. Had studied his habits. His preferences. His routines. I'd read his journal. Seen his targets. Understood his type. I knew he couldn't stop. The journal made that clear. He was addicted to the cycle. Finding a vulnerable woman. Charming her. Marriage. Children. Years of control. Then disposal and rebirth. He'd been doing it for so long it was who he was. His identity. His purpose. Which meant he was already looking for his next victim. His next family. And he had a type. Single mothers. Financially struggling. Emotionally vulnerable. Women who'd believe him when he offered stability and love. Women like I'd been 8 years ago. So I became bait. Created a fake profile on dating sites. Single mother of 2 girls, 6 and 3 years old. Recently divorced. Working 2 jobs. Struggling financially. Lonely. Exactly his type. The FBI thought I was insane, but they agreed to support me, set me up with surveillance equipment, backup teams, safe words, panic buttons, every precaution they could think of. And then I waited. Scrolled through profiles, responded to messages, played the part of the desperate single mom looking for someone to save her. It took 3 weeks before I found him, or rather, before he found me. He was using a new name, new photos, though I recognized his eyes. Same cold calculation behind the fake warmth. He messaged me at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Said he'd seen my profile and felt like we had a connection. I responded, played coy, let him pursue me, and he did. Just like he'd pursued his previous victims. Relentless but patient, charming but not overwhelming. He asked about my daughters, their ages, their names. I told him 6 and 3, told him they needed a father figure, someone stable and strong. He loved that. I could tell from his messages. Already planning, already imagining years of control and eventually another cycle completed. We agreed to meet after 2 weeks of messaging, coffee at a cafe downtown, public place, daytime, exactly what the FBI recommended. I had 3 agents positioned nearby, one at a table pretending to read, one outside in a car, one in the back room monitoring through cameras. I arrived first, sat at a corner table with a good view of the entrance. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. I was about to see him again. The man I'd loved, the man I'd married, the man who'd planned to murder our daughters. He walked in at exactly 2:00, punctual as always. He looked different, dyed his hair lighter, grew a beard, lost some weight. But it was him. I'd know those eyes anywhere. He spotted me, smiled. That same smile that had charmed me 8 years ago. That had made me believe I'd found someone special. Someone who'd love me and protect me and build a life with. He walked over, sat down across from me, extended his hand. I'm Christopher, he said. It's so nice to finally meet you in person. Christopher. Not the name he'd used with me. Not the name on any of his fake IDs. A new identity, fresh and clean and ready for his next cycle. I shook his hand, felt his skin against mine. The same hands that had strangled at least 12 children, that had hidden their bones like trophies, that had written detailed journals about their murders. Likewise, I said, kept my voice steady, played the part. We ordered coffee, made small talk. He asked about my job, my struggles, my daughters. I gave him the story we'd prepared, the fictional life designed to appeal to him. He soaked it up. I could see the calculations behind his eyes. Already planning our future, already naming our next child probably. After an hour, he suggested a walk, said the weather was beautiful, said we should take advantage of it. I agreed, stood up. Let him place his hand on the small of my back just like he'd done with Bethany, just like he probably did with all his victims. We walked toward a nearby park. The agents followed at a distance. Everything was going according to plan. We just needed him to make a mistake. Say something incriminating. Do something that would give us enough evidence for an arrest warrant that would stick. And then he leaned in close, whispered in my ear, I know who you are. My blood froze. I kept walking, tried to keep my expression neutral. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. He squeezed my arm, hard, painful. You think I wouldn't recognize my own wife, even with the different hair, the colored contacts, the makeup. I'd know you anywhere. I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. The agents were 50 feet behind us, too far. They couldn't see his hand on my arm, couldn't see the threat. Did you really think you could trap me? He hissed. Did you think I'd be stupid enough to fall for such an obvious setup? I've been doing this for 20 years. I've evaded police in 6 states. I've started over more times than you can imagine. And you thought you'd catch me with a fake dating profile and some coffee. He started pulling me toward a side street, away from the park, away from the agents. I reached for my phone, but he grabbed my wrist. None of that, he said. We're going to take a little walk, have a real conversation, about Violet and Ruby, about what happens next, about the consequences of destroying my life's work. I tried to scream, but he covered my mouth, dragged me into an alley. Where was my backup? Why weren't they stopping this? I could see one of the agents in the distance, but he was looking the wrong way. Hadn't noticed we'd diverted. My husband pushed me against a wall, his hand around my throat. Not squeezing. Not yet. Just applying pressure. A threat. You cost me years of planning, he said. Years of careful cultivation. Violet was almost ready. Another year and I could have completed the cycle. Started fresh. But you had to go digging. Had to ruin everything. You're a monster, I choked out. You killed your own daughter. Multiple daughters. They weren't daughters. They were projects. Experiments in control and patience. And they were beautiful while they lasted. Each one perfect in her own way. His eyes had a faraway look, like he was remembering, savoring, until they got too old, too aware, too difficult to manage. Then it was time for rebirth. You're insane. No, I'm evolved. Most people waste their lives on meaningless relationships, temporary connections that fade and die naturally. But I've perfected something better. The ability to love something purely, completely, and then let it go when the time is right. And then start over. Experience that pure love again. Infinite cycles of perfection. That's not love. That's possession. That's murder. He shrugged. Semantics. The point is, you've interrupted my cycle, and that can't go unpunished. His hand tightened around my throat. I couldn't breathe. Tried to claw at his arm, but he was too strong. Where were the agents? Why wasn't anyone coming? You know what's funny? He said. I was actually planning to spare you. Move on to a new family and let you live with your guilt and fear. But seeing you here, trying to trap me like I'm some amateur, it changed my mind. I think I need to send a message. Show you what happens when someone interferes with my work. Black spots danced in my vision. I was going to die in this alley. He was going to kill me and disappear again, and then he'd eventually come for Violet and Ruby, and no one would stop him. But then I heard shouting. Footsteps. The agents had finally realized where we'd gone. My husband heard it too. His grip loosened slightly. Just enough for me to breathe. This isn't over, he whispered. I'll find them. No matter where you hide them. They're mine. I made them. And I'll take them when I'm ready. Then he let go. Ran deeper into the alley. Disappeared around a corner. By the time the agents reached me, he was gone. They searched for hours. Brought in dogs, helicopters, SWAT teams. But he'd vanished again. Melted into the city like smoke. I sat in the FBI office giving my statement. Shaking. Traumatized. But also angry. Furious. He'd been right there. I'd had him. And he'd slipped away. The agent in charge tried to reassure me. Said we'd gotten his new identity. His new face. They could put out alerts. Monitor his financial activity. Track him better now that they knew what he looked like currently. But I knew it wouldn't matter. He'd already have another identity ready. Another disguise. He'd been playing this game too long. Was too good at it. That night, back in the safe house, I held Violet and Ruby close. Told them I loved them. Promised them we'd get through this. But Violet looked at me with those two old eyes. Mommy, she said quietly. He's never going to stop, is he? And I couldn't lie to her. No, sweetheart. I don't think he is. So what do we do? I looked at my daughters. My beautiful, innocent daughters who'd been born as replacements for murdered children, who carried the names of the dead, who'd been marked for death themselves from the moment they were born. And I made a decision. We stop running, I said. We stop hiding. We turn this around. How? We make him come to us. And when he does, we'll be ready. The FBI didn't like my new plan any better than the last one. But I didn't care about their approval anymore. This was personal now. He'd put his hands on me, threatened my children, promised to come for them no matter where we hid. So I stopped hiding. I went public with our story, did interviews, appeared on national news, showed my face, showed Violet and Ruby's faces, told the world what he'd done, what he was planning, what kind of monster was out there hunting children. The FBI was furious, said I'd endangered my daughters, painted targets on their backs. But those targets were already there, had been since birth. At least now everyone was watching. Everyone knew what he looked like, what to watch for. The interviews went viral. Millions of views. People across the country suddenly knew our story, knew about the serial killer father hunting his replacement daughters, knew about the cycle of murder spanning 2 decades. Tips started flooding in, people claiming they'd seen him, known him under various names, hired him, dated him. Most were dead ends, attention seekers or misidentifications, but a few were genuine leads, each one bringing us closer to finding him. 3 months after I went public, we got the call we'd been waiting for. A woman in Oregon had recognized him from the news. He'd been working at a hardware store under a fake name, dating a single mother with 2 daughters, ages 5 and 8, already starting his next cycle. The FBI moved fast, arrested him at work, didn't give him time to run. I watched the news footage of him being led away in handcuffs, screaming about being innocent, about false accusations, about corrupt police and vindictive ex-wives. But the evidence was overwhelming. His storage unit, the bones, the journal, the fake identities, witness testimony from multiple states, the woman in Oregon who'd already been feeling uneasy about some of his behaviors, his strange interest in her daughters, his questions about their routines and habits. The trial lasted 3 months. I testified, told the jury everything about finding the receipt, the investigation, the catfishing, the storage unit, the journal entries describing his plans for Violet and Ruby, the bones of his previous victims. Violet testified too, my brave 8-year-old daughter who'd survived being groomed for murder. She told the jury about the weird comments he'd made, the uncomfortable touches, the way he'd look at her sometimes, like she was food and he was hungry. The defense tried to paint me as a vindictive ex-wife, tried to claim I'd planted evidence, made up stories, manipulated my daughter. But the bones didn't lie. The DNA matched missing children from 4 different states spanning 15 years, children whose cases had gone cold, whose families had given up hope of ever finding answers. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, found him guilty on 12 counts of first-degree murder, multiple counts of kidnapping, child abuse, evidence tampering. The judge gave him life in prison, 12 consecutive life sentences, no possibility of parole. He'd die in prison. Finally stopped, finally held accountable. As they led him away, he looked at me one last time, smiled that same charming smile, and mouthed 3 words: worth every moment. Even then, even caught and convicted and facing life in prison, he didn't regret any of it, didn't feel remorse. He was exactly what I'd called him in that alley, a monster. That was 2 years ago. Violet is 10 now, Ruby is 7. We've moved again. New city, new names, new life. The FBI says we're safe now. Says he can't hurt us from prison. But I don't believe in safety anymore. Don't trust it. Keep panic buttons in every room. Sleep with pepper spray on my nightstand. Check the locks 12 times before bed. Violet started therapy. Ruby too. They're getting better slowly. Learning to be children again instead of victims in waiting. Violet wants to be a detective when she grows up. Says she wants to catch monsters like her father, protect other children. I don't have the heart to tell her that some monsters are too good at hiding, that some cycles continue no matter how hard we try to stop them. Last week I got a letter. From prison. From him. The FBI had screened it for threats and allowed it through. I shouldn't have opened it. Should have burned it. But I couldn't help myself. Inside was a single page. His handwriting. Neat. Careful. The same handwriting from his journal. From his notes about which children to target and when to kill them. My dearest wife. It read. I hope you're well. I hope Violet and Ruby are flourishing. I think about them often. Wonder how they're growing. What they look like now. Whether Violet has hit that awkward preteen phase yet. Whether Ruby is starting to develop her own personality. I've had a lot of time to reflect here. About my choices. About the cycle. About what went wrong with us. And I've realized something. I rushed things with you. Got sloppy. Let emotion override careful planning. Made mistakes I'd never made before in 20 years of perfecting my craft. But that's okay. Mistakes are how we learn, how we grow, how we become better at what we do. The good news is I have plenty of time now. Decades probably. Time to think, to plan, to perfect my methods even further. And who knows? Maybe someday I'll have the opportunity to apply those perfected methods. Maybe a technicality gets me released. Maybe evidence gets overturned. Maybe I escape. These things happen. You'd be surprised how many supposedly airtight cases fall apart years later. And if that happens, well, I know exactly where I'll go first. Exactly who I'll visit. After all, Violet will be grown by then. But Ruby will be just entering that perfect age. That sweet spot between child and teenager. When they're still moldable but starting to understand. Starting to develop those complex emotions that make the cycle so satisfying. I've invested so much in her already. It would be such a waste to not see that investment through to its natural conclusion. Give them both my love. Tell them Daddy thinks about them every day. Tell them I'm patient. Tell them I can wait as long as it takes. The letter was signed with a little hand-drawn heart. The same heart he used to draw on notes he'd leave me during our marriage, when I thought he loved me, before I knew what love meant to him. I burned the letter that night, watched it turn to ash in my kitchen sink, but the words are still in my head, still haunting me, still reminding me that this isn't over, can never be over. Not while he's alive, not while he's sitting in that cell, planning, waiting, hoping for the chance to complete his cycle. Violet found me standing at the sink watching the ashes wash down the drain. What are you doing, Mommy? She asked. Burning the past, I said. Does it work? Does burning things make them go away? I looked at my daughter, 10 years old now, so much older than she should be, so much more aware of the world's darkness than any child should ever have to be. No, sweetheart, I said honestly. Burning things doesn't make them go away, but sometimes it makes them easier to live with. She nodded. Understood in that way, she always seemed to understand things she shouldn't have to. He sent a letter, didn't he? She said. It wasn't a question. Yes. What did it say? Nothing important, just a reminder that some monsters don't stop being monsters just because they're in cages. Are we safe, Mommy? And there it was again. The question I couldn't answer truthfully without terrifying her. The question I'd been asking myself every day for 2 years. We're as safe as we can be, I said. That's not really an answer. No, it's not. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm glad you burned it. The past, I mean. Or tried to. Even if it doesn't work. Why? Because trying is better than giving up. You taught me that. When you didn't give up on finding the truth about Daddy. When you didn't give up on keeping us safe. You kept trying even when it was scary. Even when it was hard. I pulled her into a hug. Held her tight. This brave, brilliant, damaged child who'd been born as a replacement for a murdered girl. Who carried that girl's name. Who somehow survived the nightmare of having a serial killer father. We're going to be okay, I told her. All 3 of us. We survived him once. We can survive him again if we have to. And I meant it. Because here's what I've learned. Monsters are real. They walk among us wearing human faces and charming smiles. They infiltrate our lives, our families, our homes. They make us trust them, love them, depend on them, and then they try to destroy us. But sometimes, if we're strong enough, brave enough, stubborn enough, we destroy them first. We expose them. We fight back. We refuse to be victims. My husband thought he'd perfected the cycle. Thought he could murder children and start over infinitely. Thought he was smarter than everyone else. Too clever to be caught. He was wrong. He's in prison now. His carefully constructed identity shattered. His victims finally given justice. His future victims saved from the fate he'd planned for them. And Violet and Ruby are here. Alive, safe, healing, learning to be children again instead of prey. That's not perfect. It's not a fairy tale ending where everyone lives happily ever after. We still have nightmares, still have anxiety, still have panic buttons and security systems, and an ever-present awareness that monsters exist. But we have each other. We have our lives. We have our future. Things he tried to take from us but couldn't. Because I fought back. Because I refused to let him win. Because when he said I wasn't exciting anymore, I showed him exactly how exciting it could be to lose everything to someone he'd underestimated. The story might not be over. He might find a way out someday. Might come for us like he promised. But if he does, we'll be ready. And this time, when he tries to start his cycle again, he'll find out what it's like when the victims fight back with everything they have. Because I may not be the woman he married anymore. That woman was naive, trusting, easy to manipulate. But the woman I became, the one who hunted him down, exposed his crimes and testified to his evil, she's not someone he wants to meet in a dark alley. She's not someone who'll run or hide or play victim. She's someone who burns letters and sleeps with pepper spray, and teaches her daughters that monsters can be beaten if you're brave enough to face them. Someone who knows that the best revenge isn't living well. It's surviving. It's refusing to let him win even one more victory. It's taking his worst attempt to destroy us and turning it into proof of our strength. He wanted excitement. He got it. Just not the kind he expected. And now he gets to sit in his cell for the rest of his life thinking about how the boring wife he underestimated became the reason his whole carefully constructed world collapsed. That's exciting enough for me.